Hey guys, Liz here, and today I want to talk to you guys about a book that I read this past month, and that is Darken by Miss Kiersten White. This is the very first book in a series and the very first book I've ever read by Kiersten White. It is a Vlad the Impaler retelling. It's a gender bend retelling, so instead of Vlad being a dude, Vlad is a girl. So this is considered a historical piece, obviously, because it kind of goes over the life of Vlad the Impaler if he had been born a woman. It comes with more challenges than our original Vlad the Impaler in our history had to deal with, because women at the time were not treated very well. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 on Goodreads because I very much enjoyed it. It was very much a slow burning kind of novel. It took me a month, which is quite a bit of time for me. I read about a chapter or two each night, and the chapters are fairly short. It is written in third person, and we follow Lada and Radu and their siblings, so we get what's going on from both of their perspectives, and this is really the kind of beginning and early life of the characters since we meet them when they're born. So we meet Lada the moment she comes out of her mom, and it tells kind of their story and their coming of age and what really shaped them to become the people that they do maybe later on in the future. Just because I know Radu isn't a huge historical character, I know that there's a few footnotes about who he is, and Miss Kiersten took liberties in writing his character out and fleshing him out more. It was a very easy read as considering the language and the words that it uses, because it does use a lot of words would be considered from Wallachia, I can't say that, as well as from like words that are common in the Ottoman Empire, all these other words that I never personally knew anything about. Another thing I really liked about it is it showed you the history and the customs and religion and the way everything played out without feeling like it was being forced. It was very natural the way that everything was shown to you, and the descriptions of the places were really good, so you can definitely tell the difference between Wallachia and wherever they were in the Ottoman Empire. You can definitely tell how they're growing as characters as the time goes on, because it kind of does a few little time jumps in the story. And like I said, this story starts off from the moment they're born up until they're about, I want to say, their late teens. I want to say 18, 19 years old, 17 for Radu. So they're very, very young at the end of this book. And at the end of this book is kind of where you see Lada really taking charge and coming, or slowly becoming, who we know as Vlad the Impaler, or Lada the Impaler, as she's probably going to be known at the end of this series. This is a three-parter, as I said, so this is the very first one. I am extremely excited to pick up the next book next year and the book after that. I think that it was such an interesting concept to make Vlad a woman. Definitely adds a lot of layers to the story and to Lada's character, or Vlad's character. It shows kind of the way or the hardships a woman could have had in this time and how she could have overcome them. I definitely would recommend this book if you're into historical pieces, and even if you're not, I feel like this would be a really interesting read. I am a fan of historical pieces, and I really much enjoyed this one. And talking about historical pieces, I don't know anything about Wallachia. I also very much loved this book because it gave me a little bit of a history lesson. I knew nothing about the Ottoman Empire, or I don't remember anything from learning it at school. I don't know anything about Romania. I don't know anything about that kind of, you know, part of the world and what happened and what led everything. Of course, everybody knows Constantinople and stuff like that, but I didn't know like kind of the deeper political things that were going on, and this was very good at telling you that stuff without feeling like a history lesson. It was really good at that. I really enjoyed it. I learned so much. Also portrayed the Islamic religion in a very good light, but as well also kind of showing some of the bad things that were associated with the religion from the Christianity point of view, which is where Radu and Lada grew up in, and you see the transformation in both the characters and their views towards the new religion that they were being thrown into. So I'm very just looking forward to it. I recommend it. Again, 4 out of 5. There were a few things that I had issues with, but very minor, nothing that really impacted the overall story and the overall plot. So that is all I can really tell you guys without spoiling the book for you guys. So I'm gonna give you guys a chance to go read that and come back and we can talk about it. Okay, so this book was really good. Again, I said I wasn't expecting to like it as much as I did. I heard great things about it, but you know, sometimes the kind of things are hit or miss, especially with historical pieces, because they tend to be really, really boring sometimes. And this book did a really good job of not boring me. The beginning was very slow, so that was kind of what took me the longest to get through. Not because it wasn't super intriguing, just because it was slower, and it was at the beginning of their life when technically they were still children and you didn't really have much conflict aside from their own internal conflict of them coming of age. We also kind of see the relationship between Lada and Radu grow in the first part of the book, and you kind of get a feeling for who the characters are. Of course, Lada is very much more aggressive and angry and more savage, I guess is not the right word, but the only word I can come up with right now. And I love that it was not seen as a complete character flaw because she was a woman. Her dad kind of liked the fact that she was this way, even though he would have wished that she was a girl. So even from the beginning of her life, Lada has kind of had it horrible. Born a woman, dad wanted a male heir, or legitimate male heir, since he already had Micah or whatever his name is, who's a sociopath. And then we have, and her being not conventionally attractive. I also enjoyed that, where she wasn't, oh, this utterly beauty that used her female prowess to get everything done. But the person that was like ridiculously attractive and could get their way because of their looks was Radu, which is a male, which doesn't generally happen. Usually it's the woman that, or the girl that is seen as like delicate and cute and all that stuff. And I liked the little swap between them too. I liked, for the most part, Lada and Radu as characters. I thought Lada was a little bit sometimes over the top with the way that she did things, her aggression and all that stuff. And then sometimes I thought Radu was way too weak and too just kind of a pushover for some of those parts, where you would think a kid with siblings and all that stuff would have a little bit more cunning to him, personally, as like someone that has siblings. So yeah, the first part, I think the first 150, 200 pages was what kind of took me the longest. Once I got to the very first assassination attempt, everything kind of just like, I read it in like 2 days. And that was one of the reasons too I gave it a 4, because it wasn't as like extremely captivating very beginning of the book. And it kind of had to, I really had to kind of keep going. I didn't push myself through it because I still really wanted to know what was going on, because I did not know any of the historical context for this, which is really sad if I consider myself like someone that likes history. Okay, and then we have, you know, once the assassination attempt to Mehmed. Another thing I found interesting is just the way that Lada refers to her father, and her brother refers to their father, where it was very realistic that both of Lada and Radu's parents, their mother completely absent because, you know, she was such a young mother who was forced, I'm sure, into marrying Vlad, and Vlad being kind of like an absent father and definitely not a good person. They're always trying to get his approval, and they never can, and they probably never will, although Lada is probably really close to getting that approval, because you can kind of see it a few times, especially when first time they get left within the Ottoman Empire. But again, she couldn't live up to it because she wasn't a man. So she was always lacking something, unfortunately for her. I very much enjoyed Lada's character development and kind of the struggles she had to go through as well. Like I always do, I go on Goodreads and I see other people's opinions just to see if I agree, disagree, what I find that I agree on and stuff like that. And I saw a few reviews where they were kind of not too content with the way that Lada's character development was and her thought process regarding her sexuality and her gender. So I totally understand why people would be like upset, because she was so against being a woman and so against being, you know, sexual and being considered a woman. And honestly, I can see some of the issues with that. But let's put it into historical context in the world that, you know, we are in the time period we're in, where Lada really did see her being a woman as a weakness, as something that hindered her from her true purpose in life. I'm not saying it's right that she didn't accept that she was a woman and didn't use that, but in the context of the story, it makes sense to me. She didn't want to be a woman because we saw that, yes, the Jahar guys accepted her, but there was a few, like that one that she killed, that did not respect her, even if she could kick his ass and beat him to the ground time and time again, because she was a woman, because she wasn't a man. He hated her and he tried to sexually assault her. So her not wanting to be a woman or to be womanly or all that stuff definitely made sense to me. I probably would have done something similar in her position, especially when she is in the Ottoman Empire, where literally a woman could kind of be like disowned from her family if she enters the harem, something like that. If she enters the harem and she kind of just becomes the property of the sultan. So something as simple as stepping into a building, you know, takes away power from women. But I also did like the wives talking to her about that, where like you have to kind of use things like that for your own benefit so that you can prosper in a world that doesn't want you to prosper, or you can have power in a world that doesn't allow you to have power. So I enjoyed that. I totally understood why some people were not happy with the way Lada saw herself as a woman and, you know, really wanted to be a man. But unfortunately, especially in this time period and very much in the past, women were not respected, and women were more property and what we would consider like breeders as opposed to actual human beings. The fact that at the end of this book she got all these men to follow her is extremely amazing. I love the way that it was done, where she didn't just get their approval, she had to work for it, and it made it very realistic. Another thing I saw was the way Radu's sexuality was, you know, portrayed. Again, look at the time period. Look at the culture that we're in. Men are not allowed to like other men because I don't think it was more because it was taboo, but because you couldn't get an heir from such a relationship. I did, like, someone was like, oh, Radu was having such like sexual like LGBT crisis or something like that, and it's like, how do you expect someone to know that kind of stuff if everything that's being shoved down your throat is you have to like women, you have to. Of course he's gonna have a hard time figuring out that that's not his personal preference until someone points it out to him, because for him the love he felt for Mehed was something pure, and it wasn't until Lazar mentioned that type of kind of, or insinuated that kind of relationship between them, that he even had sexual thoughts, I should say. Although there is a point where he talks about him growing into his own body when he's in the pool, as well as Lada, they start to notice their changes in their body, which is also something I found very refreshing, because you don't tend to see that in literature for young, you know, kids, or where children are growing up. You don't get to see them like starting to feel things in their body and starting to wonder what's going on like inside of me, like what like, you know, that stuff is scary and it's confusing, and I'm glad that it was addressed in this book. But yes, going back to his sexuality, he finally, like, he accepts who he is, but it's very hard to accept yourself when nobody else accepts you. And, you know, if he's only ever been attracted to Mehmed too, like, it's very hard for him to kind of come to terms with what it is he wants and what it is he likes. The whole tortured, you know, sexuality thing, I understand. It goes again with, you know, Lada coming to terms, or, you know, being against being a woman. So they mirror each other in a way. So Lada doesn't want to be a woman. Radu doesn't want to admit he is attracted to men, or at least Mehmed. So I can see the issues with that, definitely, but I feel like it was realistic for a historical piece. I feel like it would have been unauthentic if that stuff hadn't been included, and the struggles that they had would not have been included. This brings me also to Mehmed and his wife and children. I was so not happy with that. I was like, really, dude? Like, you're gonna be over here pretending or liking Lada and sneaking into the harem and, you know, screwing other women and having children. Like, he's a little iffy, and him thinking that he is like the prophesized person to like lead his empire to like greatness, and him wanting to take on Constantinople even though so many people have died and nobody has been able to do it. Like, that just shows how stubborn he is. And both Lada and Radu liking him makes sense though, because he's kind of one of the only people that showed them kindness once they were taken away from their dad, and they really didn't know kindness up until him. He protected them, he kind of became their friend, and he just was overall there for them, and I can see why they both were so attracted to him, and they both ultimately fell in love with him. Do I like it? No. I hope Lada, I'm actually would be okay with Lada not having a love interest in the rest of the story, and if it is, I hope it's nobody that we've met. I hope it's somebody new, because I don't really like anybody for her, and I don't really think any of them are her equal, even though she does mention that like Mehmed is kind of her equal. No, he's not. Definitely, I don't agree with that. I don't ship that after the whole second assassination attempt, or third, whatever, because he got like tried to assassinate like 3 times. Like, you're obviously doing something wrong, or like you need to work something out if you've been trying to get assassinated like 3 different times, bro. The first time, again, Lada saved him. Second time, Lada saved him. Third time, Lada saved him. He's probably gonna get killed, although I can't remember historically if he does or not, if Lada isn't there. Like, he is lost without Lada. Lada is his savior. Going back to Lada and Radu's kind of character development, I enjoyed the fact that Lada and Radu really had to struggle to come to terms with the kind of person they are at the end of the story. You know, they both had to toughen up or soften up in Lada's case. So Lada had to soften up and realize that, you know, it's not good or bad, and that to get the things that you want to, you have to be good, and you also have to be bad in, you know, her perspective and in other people's perspective. So she really had to learn how to play to get what she wanted ultimately, and she had to kind of soften herself up and be willing to do things or not do things to make sure that the outcome she wants is the outcome that's gonna happen. She also became less angry at the end of the book as opposed to at the beginning, when she was like biting people and just kicking people and being horrible. And then we have Radu, who had to really toughen up and was forced to toughen up because of some of the things that happened to him, and how he had to learn that he had to do bad things to be a good person, and vice versa. I also enjoyed change and the shift in their relationship throughout the whole story. So at the beginning, Radu was always trying to gain Lada's approval, and Lada was just like not having it. Then we have later on, after they took Mehmed off the throne the first time, they were so close, and because they shared that secret and all that stuff. And then slowly they started to kind of drift away and not having to depend on each other, even though they're the only two people they have in the world, because they basically disowned their father. So at the end, they both chose not to be with each other, even though they should. Like, you should not be separated. They better come back together, and they better like be all happy, and Radu be her like advisor or something, because I have a feeling that he's going to have a hard time coping without her later on, as opposed to maybe like book 3. They need to be like, they're siblings, they kind of have to be around each other, I feel. And I also think that her like mini husband at the beginning had something to do with the uprising, and kind of because he really did want to go back to Wallachia. I will never be able to say that right. So maybe we'll learn that he kind of did something later. Mehmed, we'll see if he marries again. I don't know if he can do that. I know he can keep multiple wives. So I wonder if him and Radu will get together. I feel like they might for a little bit, and then Radu might like be like, wow, I didn't know I loved you, you're a shitty person. Because there was a moment in the bath, kind of, it was like a romantic moment between them. And I think I read somewhere historically that they were lovers. Who knows where Kristen will go with that. Let's hope. That'd be interesting to see. And then Lada finding out that they were together, and her kind of being like, whatever, I didn't care about you anyway. But yeah, I don't want Lada to have a love interest, at least nobody that we know. Nobody is her equal. She's going to have to like toughen up even more. Like, she's already a tough person, she's already a vicious person, and I think later on we're gonna see that multiplied times like a million, because she has to become such a ruthless person historically. Like, we know Vlad the Impaler, literally his name is Vlad the Impaler. Like, you don't get a name like that from being kind. So I'm interested to see what triggers and what leads Lada to really become this completely ruthless person. And I'm just gonna stop talking because this video is already way too long. So yes, did you guys agree with some of the things I had to say? Did you disagree with some of the things I had to say? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Are you gonna read the rest of the series? I want to know. Let me know in the comments down below. I really want to have a conversation with you guys about this. And if you guys want to not have a conversation in the comments, you guys can always hit me up on Twitter at Life of Liz as well. I'll also leave that linked down below with all my other social media and stuff like that. So, and I Darken 4 to 5. Enjoyed it very much. So yeah, I post videos very sporadically, so if you want to be notified on when I post, feel free to hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up. I would very much appreciate that. I will be having a few more videos out in the near future, and if you didn't watch my previous video, I will be starting an Abroad Adventures segment as well. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and happy readings. Adios!